Hey everybody, in today's video, I am going to be talking about the importance of effectively feeling our emotions and how to process them a little bit easier. So, without further ado, let's get to it. So, when it comes to our emotions, they of course always stem from a thought that we think. A thought comes into our mind, and then we have a judgment about that thought, which then creates an emotion of some kind, right? Whether we are thinking about a specific person or an event, something within us is always created emotionally, and then thereafter, physiologically. This process, obviously, you can spell it out in those steps, but this process happens like that, right? So emotions have two options. They can either be expelled from the body, whether that be through yelling or crying, or for some people, it's more physical release. There's the other option, of course, of emotions not being fully processed and felt once they come into the consciousness. And then where does it go? Those emotions then get actually physically packed away in our cells, in our body. The reason that a lot of people really struggle to process their emotions in an effective way is somewhere in their past, it has been proven that it doesn't feel okay and it doesn't feel safe to process emotions because of external feedback telling them that it's not okay. A lot of times this comes from childhood, where we are told, stop crying, be quiet, you're fine. And as soon as a child is told that, that is then ingrained into their subconscious patterns, saying, in order to survive, I must be quiet and stop crying and not feel this bigger feeling that I am having right now. So it then obviously carries over into adulthood. And if we have the ability to allow our children to feel our feelings, to give them the proper tools in order to fully process those feelings, then they would grow to be adults that are emotionally intelligent and know how to feel their feelings effectively in order for them to fully move through their bodies without being stuffed down into our cells. So every emotion that we have, it actually creates a frequency, and that can be measured in hertz. We can measure, those emotions like shame and guilt. Those are the lowest on the scale, shame being at 20 hertz. And then joy, we get up into the higher numbers, and enlightenment, where you're at 700. But when you think of those frequencies of the sad and angry and heavier emotions, and you're looking at that on a scale, those waves are very thick, right? And so that thickness accumulates in the body and needs to be expelled in some way. When we let those emotions build up, oftentimes we have an emotional explosion, right? So when we feel, when we have a thought coming into our consciousness, and when we attach an emotion to it, what do we do with that? If we're in a situation where we can't process that emotion at the time, it can feel challenging. My greatest hope is for all human beings to become so emotionally intelligent that they have the ability, no matter where they are or what they are doing, to effectively process that emotion. For example, you're at work and you feel overwhelmed by something. You have, you're triggered by something that somebody has said or done, or just overwhelming vibrations that you're feeling. And the amazing thing would be to be able to say, excuse me, I'm feeling really overwhelmed with a certain emotion right now, and I need to process it. Having the ability for the world to pause so that you can do that for 2 minutes would be amazing. So you can go off to another room, or if you're in a supportive setting, they allow you to do that and they help you through that and support you through that. What an amazing world that would be. But a lot of times that's not our reality. So if that is not your reality, sometimes we feel as though we need to skip that step of processing the emotion and we need to deep breathe. But then when you are in an environment that feels safe to process that emotion, it needs to be felt again. Otherwise, it will get suppressed and it will linger in your body and manifest in a physical condition down the road. So how do we do that? Once you have felt that feeling, and this is the scenario where you can't process that emotion immediately. Deep breathing is beautiful. To move yourself through that, to allow, you can give your bodies little reminders saying, I hear you, I feel you, and I honor what you're feeling right now. Being able to honor ourselves, having an emotion without the guilt and the shame is so important for us to be able to fully process that later on. It's like a little kid, right? That we have that, they have no inhibitions of holding back their feelings, right? And a lot of times if we're conscious, we allow them to feel that. We're not going to be telling them to shut up, to stop. We're there to comfort them, to help them through those bigger emotions, because their prefrontal cortex does not have the ability to turn on. Their fight or flight response is occurring. So we honor them in that process and in that feeling, and we're there for them to give them comfort when they're emotionally dysregulated. And so as we get older, why wouldn't we do that for ourselves too? So as soon as you notice that feeling coming in, say, I notice you, I hear what you're saying right now, and I honor that you're there. Right now we're going to breathe together, and later on we're going to talk about this again. And when you get to that safe space of being able to fully process that emotion, you may need to close your eyes and visualize what it was that initially triggered you, to bring you back to that space so that you can feel that emotion again and then fully process it by crying, by screaming, by verbalizing what it is that you needed to verbalize at that time, but you didn't feel as though it was safe to do so. If all of that is fully felt, and I'm gonna leave some examples in this clip of me actually going through this kind of process so that you get an idea of what it can look like. Once that fully happens and it's honored without guilt or shame, you can then move on so much faster. And we see this in children too. A lot of times they will feel their big feelings. They will cry and cry and cry. And then as soon as that process is done, they're often playing with their friends again, or doing what they were doing before, like nothing ever happened. So if we allowed ourselves as adults to do the same, then all of the physical conditions that end up manifesting from the suppressed emotions and inability to speak our truth would be far less. So I will leave some video clips at the end here to show you how I have processed emotions in the past. They're loud, they're noisy, especially being a singer, but this process is so effective that it can take me all of a few minutes to fully feel a feeling and then to be able to move on to the joyful experiences and the peace without suppression. Trigger warning: crying and screaming does occur in order to show the process of a full release. Please be sure to watch the screen and read the captions. Breathe deeply once you feel a full release from under your rib cage. It should feel so much freer and easier to take those deep breaths now. If you still feel a tightness under your rib cage, there may be some more emotions that need to be released. That feels better. Oh, and laughter is really healing too. When we can just allow this entire process to unfold with love and release that guilt and shame, it is transforming. Thank you for being with me for this video, this information, and I hope that you have found it helpful. And if you have, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe. And I am sending you so much love.